I want to start this out by saying this is not malicious, but it's just that give clarity for those with an eye to see and an ear to hear. I want to give y'all my qualifications on why I feel I'm qualified to make these statements and do this video. I got 3 years of listening and studying Yusef L or Useless L documents and shows. I've watched high frequency radio grow from just 2 members, Paul David Savage L and Yusef L, to about 10 members. High frequency radio had some days 2 shows a day. I remember Brother Sharif, when he was on your show talking about the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, the Fair Credit Reporting Act, the Telephone Practices Act, he, at the time, was totally against the Patriot mythology. I remember he was talking shit about your information indirectly on your own platform before he finally left. Yeah, I remember. This is before Jonah Bay, Phony Bay, and this is probably your first beef at High Frequency Radio. I remember you and Q Ali trying to recruit True Freeman to be a host on the show as well, but it didn't work. His mind wasn't stable enough to come over. He wanted to be the big dog, and he couldn't see himself being a part of something that possibly could have been special. He didn't see that. So that conflicted with the way he thought. And then he dissed you. He the one brought forward the fact that you were squatting in the house in California, if you had the deed or you were doing the adverse possession. He brought that forward. I remember January 1st, 2014, into Jonah Bay, aka Phony Bay, with the birth certificate authentication, and it sent the members of High Frequency in a frenzy. Yeah, I remember that. He probably was the hottest, his show was probably the hottest show on High Frequency at the time, for the longest time. I remember Issa L, rescission of the Social Security number webinar. And matter of fact, what's so funny about that, I remember you doing a webinar that very next week where you talked about the one man out document. And in this webinar, you pointed out another way to rescind the Social Security number pursuant to the one man out document. Undermining at its finest. I remember Sister L. I remember the 2 sisters that had the show together. And one of them left. I remember you coming on the air saying it hurted you. I remember that. Hell, I remember Q Ali and Tahaka shows being on with very little callers or very few callers. And Issa too at the time. I remember Jonah Bay and Issa's clash about the Constitution, the U.S. Constitution versus the state Constitution. I remember that. In that particular beef, you sided with Jonah Bay. I remember Dave McDowell in the UCC, and his information was pissing off Jonah Bay because Jonah Bay had to answer questions about David McDowell's contradictory information based on what he was teaching. Yeah, Yusef. Or useless. I remember. I also remember the Phoenician talking about shit that was like 50 years, 100 years down the line with no following on from high frequency. I remember Jonah Bey getting mad at him about something he said about the injunction, and Jonah Bey roasted his ass on that Friday show on the air. And then a following show was did called The Rebuttal by the Phoenician. In this situation, you agreed with the Phoenician, which was another thing that pissed Jonah Bey off and was basically the straw that broke his back and why he left the show, whether you know it or not. Now, Yusef, I'm going to ask this question. What type of teacher would you be if you never had any student that came back to you with challenging questions? Does the student at some point oversee the teacher? Isn't that naturally what is supposed to happen? Referring back to natural law, since that's one of the things you love, natural law. And let me ask this. Once the teacher rejects the findings, then it seems like the newbie and neophytes, to the newbies and neophytes, the teacher is being hated on. Not the case at all in this situation. Whenever I present something, it's just to show you the fault in what you're presenting. There's a ton of information out there. And there's a lot of case law that says what you're trying to do ain't credible, and it's unanimous amongst the various cases. But I thought I needed to respond to this quasi-private, what do you call it? A quasi-private, you call the government a quasi-private corporation? I thought I needed to respond to that because in no way, shape, form, or fashion, the government is. The government may make some quasi-private corporations, but it in and of itself is not that. All I ask you to do is watch what you say in disseminating this information. That's all I ask. Because contradictions, I'm coming for them. The reason why I feel I got a right to come for them is because I came to you with information, with my findings, and you refused them. You acted as if you could not be taught anything new. But you have already admitted yourself that I'm sharp. Well, if I'm sharp, why you keep acting as if I don't know what I'm talking about? Peace to the gods.
843 area code is South Carolina.
Yes, I had a question.
All right, what's going on?
I hear y'all say that the United States is a corporation, a private corporation. Yep. If it's a private corporation, why can't it say what money is?
They can say what money is.
Private.
They do. They do say what money.
So what I'm saying is, if they say a negotiable instrument presented by any private citizen is a worthless piece of paper, who are we to say they're wrong if they're a private corporation?
Well, first of all, if they make a statement that says it's a worthless piece of paper in court, first of all, that's not for them to say that. That is for the person that's being negotiated to, because there are processes in banking, all right, that you have to follow. The reason that you're setting up a secure party process is, number one, first of all, in the private domain, business is conducted through contracts. Everything is done through a contract. So there has to be some agreement, all right, that you're going to accept this. That's why the first step of the secure party process is contacting the United States, telling them your intent, what you're planning to do, and securing from them some sort of agreement, giving them something of value to put on deposit there. All right, then you're drafting against that. The next thing is, if you're handing somebody within the United States a negotiable instrument that, by the way, does have a value like a bill of exchange, because you have a bond that's being drawn off of it, okay, You got that, and they don't make presentment, and then they're telling you it's a worthless piece of paper. Well, they're not following commercial practice. Number one, all adopt.
Okay, so hold on now. If you and the party is at a disagreement, and let's say you thought you discharged something, and you in court, and different courts have said negotiable instruments presented by a private citizen, they're what is it, vapor money theory, they concluded to be that. Who are we to say?
First of all, the Supreme Court ain't concluded nothing, number one. And number two, those are arguments from individuals who come in. I've read all of those. I collect vapor money theory cases. That's why I learned my craft from. I ain't never ended up on one of them vapor money theory cases, and I've been in court. I'd argue. When a judge told me that my paper was a worthless piece of paper, because that's what they did, I said, I didn't do what they did. I said, excuse me, Your Honor, that's not for you to determine. That is for counsel to take that back to his client, and they can return it to me. You don't see not one person say that on anything. They can return it to me with evidence of a defect from a qualified third party and allow me an opportunity to cure the defect. Okay? Now, that's commercial practices. All right? You make presentment, all right? Because, see, you're trying to go off of case law, okay, where you, by the way, of individuals who probably learn. Wait a minute, listen to what I'm saying. All right? You're going off case law of individuals who probably learned something yesterday. For instance, give me a case. Give me one of them vapor money theory cases. We can read it right now. And I guarantee you that individual.
If you pull up the FBI website, it's on there too.
How long has that been on the FBI website?
Long time.
Long time. Okay, so you think you're telling me something I don't know. All right, let's pull it up on the FBI website. Oh, hold on. I'm going to pull up the one on the FBI website. Because I know who you are. All right. You one of the, I think you, ain't this the one I usually be getting into it with? Ain't you that person? That individual? No. Okay.
No.
All right, FBI. All right, what is it like? Bill of Exchange? I think I don't even think it's a bill of exchange. It's fraudulent instrument or the money order? What was it? Common fraud.
I can't remember myself. I seen it a while ago.
I'll tell you what it is. Yeah, you see a picture of it. When you look at that, I look at it and say it's fraudulent. I look at that on the FBI website. I say, that's some bullshit right there. It's a fraudulent document. See, that's why I don't like when y'all call in with that. Because you can say it's on the FBI website. Let me say this. You got to look and see what the people are doing. That's why you got to study the Unicitral Convention, study Article 3 of the UCC, and make sure that you're creating a properly drawn up negotiable instrument. That's number one. Okay? You got to know how to put together a properly drawn up negotiable instrument, which that on the FBI website is not one. That's not one. So the FBI is 100% correct in that. Also, they're trying to draw against an account. So it is fraudulent. It's an account that they're trying to draw off of. They put like the social security number on there and things like that. You don't draw off an account. And you especially don't draw off an account from in their system. All right? The value is on the face of the instrument. That's what you put in your bond for with the Secretary of Treasury. All right? You're not trying to draw off of some account that they have established. You're creating a private transaction for yourself and allowing somebody else to be the holder. And this is the next thing I'm saying. This is what I'm talking about. None of those people understand that process. They're using guaranteed trust versus whatever, put all this case law in that don't say nothing about what they're talking about. Guaranteed trust company don't say nothing like that. The HCR 192 of June 5th, 1933 don't say anything about that. There's an implied agreement contained in HCR 192. All right, so you got people going into court. I read these cases. They people just like you. They go in there and they just learn something, and then they go in and they try to discharge something or something because their house is about to get foreclosed on or something like that, and then they posterize their ass. Just like them cats gonna get posterized trying to do them declaratory judgments and shit like that. They gonna posterize their ass. They gonna posterize.
Let me ask you this.
Because they're not going. Because let me tell you this. Because they're not going to let private information into the public. You got to be skillful enough to know not to allow that stuff to get on the public record. It can't get on the public. Some information don't belong on the public record. It don't. So go ahead. What were you gonna say? Next thing.
Okay, so how is the United States?
Did y'all get y'all declaratory judgment? Did y'all get y'all declaratory judgment?
Still pending.
Did you get your declaratory judgment?
Still pending.
Okay, so call me back when you get through with it. Until that time, don't you ask me a motherfucking question. Okay?
What? Why you get so upset?
Because you're a snake. Okay,
I'm not a snake. I'm not a snake. I ask questions.
Yeah, but you don't ask questions with a spirit of you trying to find out something. All right, you come in, you think you're so smart. You think you're so smart. You call in and everything. Like I just asked, was you that dude? You said no. Now I asked you, did y'all get y'all declaratory judgment? You say y'all it's still pending. All right, so
I'm not that dude. That's the other dude. You talking about?
Verified who was.
I'm not that dude. But let me ask you this. How can y'all say the United States is a corporation, a private corporation,
I'm not asking none of
everything that governs it is in the public?
Because the public can make, they fall in public policy. Okay? It's public policy, number one. And number two, they created a corporation. You can find, do you want me to give you the case law that tells you that? Okay, there's case law to show you.
So just because I can agree with them creating a corporation.
Okay, wait, hold on. And then,
how can it be private?
Wait a minute, stop. Go get you a William Blackstone commentaries. I'm answering your question. Go get your William Blackstone commentaries. They got a whole section in there on corporations. Okay, go read it, and I'm going to put this on your mind. Understand that when they say the king, today that's the government. Okay, because in the United States, we don't have titles of nobility. All right, so we don't use words like king, queen, lords, and things like that. You don't have that in the United States. However, all our laws came from England. Okay, so they copied it, but they changed the name. So they don't say the House of Lords, they say the Senate. They don't say the House of Commons, the House of Representatives. All right, they use different terminology. So when you see, so go get a William Blackstone commentary.
I agree with that. I agree with that.
Let me finish. Because when this country was established, they only brought two books in the United States. All right, they brought a Bible and William Blackstone commentaries. Okay, a Bible and William Blackstone commentaries. All right, those are two books that they brought when they first came over here. So if you want to see how this stuff was set up, go get you a William Blackstone. They got a whole I got one right here. If you want me to do a webinar on it or a show on it, I'll do it. But I would prefer you to read it first, because if you haven't read it, all you are is a skeptic. You're not really a student.
I ain't a skeptic.
I know you're a skeptic. No, I ain't talking to you, a skeptic. Okay, well, what are you?
Check this out. So,
I want to know when y'all get this declaratory judgment. I want to know when you're going to get this fucking declaratory judgment. I got a question for you. How many months it been? How many months has it been? They got
to move on their own terms. It's not me that's doing it. It's not me that's doing it.
Let me tell you something. I'm going to give you a secret. I did the same thing in 2010. And they did the same thing to me.
Give me the case number.
I will show it to you. I'll do a webinar and I'll show everybody. I did the same thing in 2010 on a mortgage. I'm going to show it to you. All right. I did it in Paulding County here in Georgia, in Paulding County, on a condo. It was a mortgage case, and I did a declaratory judgment. I didn't know everything I was doing like now, but I did a declaratory judgment. And what they did was they moved it to another case. They did the same thing. Judge didn't want to sign off on it, and let it languish forever and ever and ever. I mean, y'all not doing nothing new. I mean, damn, I tell you, creditors and their bonds got the shit in there. Talk about declaratory judgment.
I don't know. Listen. Like I said, I'm not the one that's doing it. But I still don't know if anybody who got one in court right now that's actually in court right now. I don't know if nobody. Do you know somebody?
No, I mean that's what I'm telling. Listen, I'm trying to give you some information. They're not going to allow.
No, I mean just be objective for a moment.
I'm trying to give you some information. They're not going to allow
and
private
I'm trying to give you some. Are you going to accept it?
I already
just
know
ask you to be
about
objective for a little bit.
I already know.
I ain't saying you
that.
don't know about it. I'm not saying you don't know about it.
Hold on, wait.
What I'm trying to say though,
the process you got from Ken W. Did you not?
It don't matter about the process. That's pebbles.
What do you mean it don't matter? What you mean don't matter?
The rock is what happens after using the pebbles.
Don't matter? What do you mean? What do you mean it don't matter?
So what? All of this information is regurgitated.
Okay, well, what
a lot of people ain't got no remedy from it.
Wait a minute, I'm asking you a question. Ken W. says he got a default judgment, okay, because they never answered.
He said it.
Okay.
Did you see the order? Did you see the order?
He said he got
default judgment. If he got a default judgment, that means nobody responded. If he got a default judgment, that means nobody responded.
I'm not here to promote Ken W.'s process, okay? I'm not here to promote it or anything like that. I'm just stating the facts, what was said. All right, I'm not promoting his process or anything like that.
You agree if he got a default, that means nobody responded.
I'm trying to make a point, okay? What the point I'm trying to make is this, okay? They never ever respond in the public to anything, okay? They don't respond.
Well, they responded to this one.
They don't. I'm talking about. They're not going to acknowledge any of the things that you're saying. They're not going to acknowledge it. You saying that you got something in there where they admit that the birth certificate is a bond or it's a certificate of title or something like that? You telling me?
What I'm saying is they responded after the proof of service. They responded.
I write an administrative process and I'll get a letter back sometimes. I can show you 1,000 letters that somebody responded to me. I can show you that. But you got something that's called non-responsive, which is they're not addressing the issues that you're talking about. It's non-responsive. All right, so I write somebody.
How is that a non-response?
Because they're not addressing the issues that you're discussing. Okay? If I come in and say,
that could be a negative defense. That could be a negative defense.
Well, I'm gonna tell you.
How can you call it a non-response?
I'm gonna put it in layman so that the people understand what a judge told me.
Look at negative defense and see if that's not when they can answer you, they cannot respond to anything you said. That's a negative defense.
Exactly, and then what do you do after that? All right, you move the court for if there's no material issue of fact, okay, because a lot of times they don't respond because you haven't raised a justiciable issue or something like that.
So if you say if they don't respond, that's a default. If they don't respond at all, that's how. If you say Ken W got the default judgment, that's how he got it. They didn't respond. Default.
Okay, but he's out promoting this whole thing based off of a default judgment. Okay, he got a default, which is good. It's a judgment. It's a judgment. All right, a default judgment is good. I don't knock a default judgment. All right, go back and listen.
That's great. No fight.
Go back. Go back. I don't have a problem with a default judgment. You get a default judgment, that's just as good. But there's nothing in that judgment that admits to anything that is in there. Is my point. He has a default judgment. They didn't respond. That's how Ken W. did. His whole process is predicated off of a default judgment, which I don't have a problem with. I don't got a problem with that. If you get a default judgment, that's fine. A judgment is a judgment.
A default judgment, that's impossible to get. He looked up. That should have never happened again.
Well, I mean, there are people out there there are people out there selling the process. So I don't know if he lucked up or not. My point is, only thing I'm saying is, I've been through this. Okay, I know I've been through all. I'm gonna show you. I guess I got to show people these type of things. I'll show you what I'm talking about. I've been doing this for a long time. When I talk, I know you see I'm on the radio all the time. 5 years before I came on the radio, 6, 7 years before I came on the radio, I was out there doing what y'all was doing. I was out there every day, probably more so than what y'all were doing. We discharging debt. We sending in negotiable. I still got negotiable instruments that you can go and file in the UCC registry if y'all know where to look. that the ones that they put on the news. When I was on the news in 2010. All right? So the thing is this is 2010. So my point in saying all of this is this. I've been through that. I've been in court a whole bunch of times. All right? I've done a lot of different things. And this is the conclusion I've come to. All right? Ain't no fucking one process that's going to work. Because if a person at one process is going to work, that motherfucker can make $1 million fucking dollars. Because everybody's going to be in a line around the corner to get in to make it work. This should be common fucking sense. All right, from what I've seen a lot of stuff work. I've seen a lot of you don't hear me pinpoint not one thing. I remember when people were doing when it first started off, people were doing the
right now you keep saying the declaratory judgment that my friends found is some bullshit. So how you gonna say you don't? You saying that's some bullshit?
I didn't say it was some bullshit. I said Minnesota Rule 220 is some bullshit.
You done said that shit several times.
I said Minnesota Rule 220 is some bullshit. So if you're basing it off of that, it's some bullshit. I ain't coming back.
That's right. So you saying you just contradicted yourself.
Getting a declaratory judgment obviously is not bullshit. Getting a declaratory judgment and going in and speaking, saying, "Hey, look, hold
on. Let me say it like this. Let me ask you this. If they got a declaratory judgment, go ahead.
When I get a declaratory judgment, if you go in and you say, I believe that my birth certificate is a certificate of title, all right, and I believe that title is bifurcated and in some kind of way the legal interest in that title is belongs to you, and I have the equitable interest in it, or in some kind of way I'm like the registered agent on this particular artificial entity or this Inslee G thing. That's all very reasonable. That's all very reasonable. I can understand that. I can go in court and seek declare for the court to tell me if I'm right or not. Okay, am I right?
Hold on, right? And add Minnesota Rule 220 to it.
If you want to
tell me why is that some bullshit? If you asking them to declare your right.
Hold on. The reason I said Minnesota Rule 220 is some bullshit because, first of all, y'all done misread it. That's not what it's talking about. So the very premise of you using Minnesota Rule 220 is off base. All right, number one, because you didn't read the shit right. Okay, so we got some.
Right quick. Yusef, a court can dismiss the action sui sponte, right?
No, they don't. No, wait, they could dismiss the sui sponte, but it may be
so if that was the case,
it may be some justiciable issues in there that they can come to determine, and that's not a case. That's a declaratory judgment. You're seeking a determination on something. That's not a case.
That is a case. They give you a number. You got a number.
It's not a man. You know what the fuck I'm talking about. All right. God damn. All right. Don't be.
You say it's not a case. It is a case.
All right. You know what a declaratory judgment is. When you go to a declaratory judgment, you're trying to reach a determination on the rights of the party. Okay. What are your rights? You're trying to find out what are the rights of the party involved in the case. All right. Now, I'm talking to you in a way that I'm assuming that you know all this. And the reason I'm calling you a snake is because every time I say something, you're trying to find fault in what I'm saying.
No, I'm not trying to find fault. I know you know what you're saying.
You know, you act
so
like
you act
like little woman and shit. You know what I'm saying? It's like what women do and shit.
No, I don't act like no woman.
All right,
don't go to the name calling.
That's what you act
I'll
like.
I'll never call names.
I called you out name.
That's what most lawyers do, though. Whenever you get to talking to them.
Hey, let me tell you something, bro. You call in here every time trying to find fault to what I'm
teaching and everything. Whenever you get to talking to them, they resort to name calling.
Like what the fuck I'm saying. Tired of you niggas and everything. Keep calling over here.
You
want to find you taking up people's time, bro. It's take people calling in want to find out something. All right, and
I'm trying to give them something to look into.
You call in. The first thing you start asking me is about this corporation. You don't think the corporation is private? Let me ask you some questions. If it's not private,
how can it be private?
What is it? Okay, what is it?
How can it be private if everything about it is in the public?
What is
the public information?
A public can form a private corporation to benefit the public. Told you to go and get you a
okay. So then wouldn't that make it public then?
It's for the benefit of
How can the public form a private corporation, Yusuf? That don't even make sense.
You know what a private foundation is? A private
It
foundation.
ain't by the government. It ain't by the government.
A private foundation is a trust. Okay, it's a trust.
Is that trust by the government?
The government. Person,
It is.
It's a person and it's an entity. Okay, it is an entity. The government can form a corporation, a company, a trust, a partnership,
it can't be private.
association.
You said you done read this case law that distinct. Remember, I got one for you. Now it's something I listen to you.
Okay, I'm gonna make this simple.
That case, hold on. Remember that case you read about the guy who had the trust account?
I'm gonna make this simple for you. Explain to me separation of powers doctrine. I'm gonna make this simple for you. Explain to me separation of powers.
Oh my goodness, that's so funny. All Congress got to do is pass a law.
Okay,
all Congress has to do is pass a law.
Explain separation of powers to me.
I'm just gonna take you. All Congress has to do is pass a law.
That's not separation of powers. Can you look up separation of powers? That's not separation of powers. That's not separation of powers. Do you know that
I'm thinking about that delegation. You always go to delegation. Wait a minute,
hold on. That's not delegation of power.
To delegate, they got to pass a law. The separation of powers.
Can I read you what separation of powers is?
The separation of powers is supposedly no branch can infringe on the other branch's benefits or privileges. Okay. So the Congress passes the laws, the executive branch enforces the laws, the judiciary branch interprets the law. That's the way it's supposed to go.
Now the key is that the other branches of government cannot infringe on powers that have been delegated to that specific branch. All right. So the executive branch of government under the organic constitution and the judicial branch of government cannot infringe upon the powers that have been delegated over to the legislature. However, they form what's called checks and balances on each other. A simple example is this, is that the legislature can draft the laws, but the president can veto the laws. All right? And then they can send it back to the House and the Senate, and they get two-thirds vote, and they can still pass it. So that's a check on the
president. What about this?
Okay.
Hold on. What about this? The president don't even got to enforce the laws either.
But then what will happen is that the judiciary will come in.
Nothing.
Right?
The judiciary can't. I'm watching it today. I'll give you a prime example. I'm watching it today.
Wait a minute, hold on.
I'm going to give you a prime example.
You learned that from me.
No, I give you a prime example.
I'm trying to tell you how that works. How that works
I understand how it's supposed to work, but I'm telling you what I'm seeing the professionals do. All right, so a prime example is what's going on with Hillary Clinton. All right. No one in the executive branch would press the charges. Therefore, although they got laws that Congress passed, the executive branch, which was Democrat, did not enforce the law. So the judiciary had nothing to interpret. Same thing with Donald Trump.
Wait a minute. First of all, wait a minute, hold on. If they pass a law, okay, the judiciary is going to determine the constitutionality of it. Okay, whether the president has a constitutional duty to enforce it. Now, usually when they do that, that is like a chess move. Okay, they are delaying something because it's going to be coming through litigation while they're trying to accomplish something else. That's a move that they do that's a political move that they do in politics and so forth. If Trump is trying to accomplish something and he feels like the legislature is getting in the way of that, he'll use some what's called dilatory tactics, okay, to, impose his will to get his will through or something like that. This is the game that's played between each of the individual branches of government. But you're taking me off my point. I'm digressing. Back to the point of what I was attempting to say. So, since these other branches of government cannot infringe on them, all right, now we go to Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution, and we find all the powers that have been delegated to the legislature, okay? All right, one of them is at 10 miles square under Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17, all right? All right, so let's read that real quick, because this is the key. Article 1, Section 8.
That's not.
Clause, how is it not? Clause 17.
Because if there is
Man, I'm not
nobody
listening.
to enforce, if there's nobody to enforce the law, then what do you have?
Okay, I'm about to tell you. I'm about to tell you. I'm about to tell you. Okay. All right. Now, under 17, they got what? On Article 117. To exercise exclusive legislation. Do you know what the word exclusive means?
Only.
It's exclusive. All right. It's called plenary power. Plenary power. They got all power, right? To exercise exclusive legislation in all cases whatsoever over what? Over such a district not exceeding 10 miles square, okay, as made by session of particular state, and the acceptance of Congress become the seat of the government of the United States, and conjunction to exercise like authority. Here's the second part of it, okay, over all places purchased by Congress or consent of the legislature of the state, in which the same shall be for the erection of forts, magazines, arsenals, dockyards, and other needful buildings. So, right here in Article 1, Section 8, they can legislate for what? They legislate over the District of Columbia and over everything they purchased. Okay? Over everything they purchased. All right? Do we agree with that? Did I say something wrong?
Yeah, I agree with that.
Okay, we agree with that. All right. Now, all right, so that's almost like I'm not going to call it private yet, but that's like their little private space. Let's call it their little private space. Now, nobody can mess with them in the District of Columbia. So they got all power. If they want to create a corporation, all right, they can do that, okay? Because they got what's called plenary power. Nobody can question
That's true, but it's
them.
not private.
All right, stop. Wait a minute. How is it not private? Okay, it's private because you have to contract.
Because
what kind of law
you have public servants running it. I know you know the case law I'm talking about.
You got public.
Okay,
if I have a public servant, okay, you got a public servant, and you create a corporation, a private corporation, okay, a private corporation that's operating exclusively in their jurisdiction. All right, Justin. Now you want to call it a public corporation? You saying it's public corporation?
It got to be public. It's ran by public service. What do you mean?
All right,
let me ask you. What's that case law you read to us that was about the guy who didn't want black people coming to his park, but since the church incorporated the public, it made it public. What was that? You mean that case law you read, right? Same situation you named right now.
I'll give it to you in a second. Now, let me ask you a question. What kind of law is contract law?
It's private law, but it's still governed by public policy.
So when you go, I want you to study corporations, and I want you to study quasi-public, quasi-private. Okay? I want you to go get American jurisprudence, and I want you to go to corporations, and I want you to look up the term quasi-public, quasi-private. All right? I want you to go look at it.
What they got to do with
because we're talking about public people. You got public
and a corporation that they have.
I told you go get because this is talking about corporations and municipalities. Go get an American jurisprudence and study corporations.
Why I got to do all that when I got a case law that says that it can be one or the other?
The case law doesn't say if it's public or private.
It does. It says it got to be one or the other.
No, it doesn't.
That case law that you read to us said if public service is going to run it, then it's going to be public. Otherwise,
stop embellishing on that.
It's the truth. Is that not a case you read? Is that not a case you read?
Hold on, I'm pulling up quasi-public corporation. All right. What a quasi-public corporation is a type of corporation in the private that is backed by a branch of government that has a public mandate to provide a giving service. You can find that right there on Investopedia website. Now,
what case law is that, though?
Hold on. Let me say something to you, man. What case
law?
I don't say things unless I read it. Okay, I don't come off the top of my head and say shit. Okay. Now, hold on. Let me finish.
That's fake anyway. It's seeming like.
I didn't shit. I'm gonna say this. I know some of the shit sound far-fetched. It sounds far-fetched and everything. But that's how the law is. Okay, that's why I tell y'all to go and read this stuff. Because when you go and read it, you're going to see a whole lot of stuff you've never heard before and you never seen before, and quite frankly, will sound kind of crazy. Okay, it's going to sound kind of crazy. I'm not saying it don't sound crazy. Okay, but that's why I'm sitting here telling you about quasi-public and quasi-private. Now, let me pull up the case law for you. I'm going to open up your mic again. I'm going to pull up the case law for you so the audience, because I know they want to hear this case law we just got through discussing and everything. All right, and it is I have it on my website. I downloaded it. If you go to highfrequencyradionetwork.com, it is on my website. It should be. Are you there? I opened up your mic. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm here.
All right. So you go over to High Frequency Radio Network, right on my website. You go to the PDF section. Okay, I got law library documents. I'm about to add some more on there too, because I just went down there and found a whole bunch of stuff on negotiable instruments. All right, go down there, and this comes out of a book called United States Code Services. When you go to the law library, they are turquoise and black. You got United States Code, which is USC, and then you got United States Code Annotated. There are two different sections of these are three sections of books usually that every law library has, and usually they kind of overlap each other. There's United States Code Services, United States Code, and United States Code Annotated. All right? So we go to I guess everybody, y'all done crashed my website and everything. Everything. Let me see if I can get to it, boy. Everybody must be rushing over to the website. Let's see if I can pull it up real quick. Go to the PDF section. And you can find the case. I got a section on my website. All right. And you're going to see it's going to be Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17. All right. When you go to the law library and you get that United States Code Services book, the first volume of it is the Constitution, Articles 1 through 3. Articles 1 through 3. All right. You open up the book and you go to the section in Article 1. And then it's going to run you through the Constitution with case law. You go all the way to the section of Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17. All right. You need to study everything on that. Okay, everything on that. Now, the next thing is this corporation is in Washington, D.C., which the United States Corporation is where it's located in Washington, D.C. It has to be that way because when you read the Constitution, it tells you that's the only place they can legislate in, is in Washington, D.C., and all the things that they buy, they purchased. Okay? So, number one, the common sense man, private individual, thinking, because you're private, you should be thinking, okay, how did this people in Washington, D.C. get me? Now, the Clearfield Doctrine explains it, that when you come in and start doing business, you descend to the level of a private individual under the Clearfield Doctrine. Go read the Clearfield Doctrine. All right, and then when you go and study these municipalities and these corporations, you're going to see a quasi-public corporation, all right, quasi-public corporation and quasi-private corporation. Now, I will tend to agree with you on you got public actors running the corporation. I don't know if they're really running it. I don't really know how they're running it. Me and you really can't even really talk about that, to tell you the truth, because we're not privy to the documentation that goes behind it. What I do know is I know this, is that for a private citizen to come in to anything, to get him to come in, you have to have a contract. Contract law is private law. And okay, so they're contracting with you on the private side. Do you understand what I'm saying? You understand what I'm saying? Hello? Hello? I'm going to give him a minute to open up his mic back up. Hey.
Uh, municipal corporations right here. Commentaries, American jurisprudence, quasi corporations. Public corporations. Now, who's heard the word quasi public corporation? Anybody heard that word before? I was on the show Friday having a discussion with someone, and they're asking me, well, how can the corporation be private? And I instructed this individual to go to American jurisprudence and read it. And here's a copy of it right here. You can see the genus corporation defined, species of corporations, public corporations, quasi-public corporations, and private corporations, subdivisions of public corporations, municipal and public quasi-corporations defined, municipal and public quasi-corporations. All right, defined. So let's go down here. He said public corporations are generally esteemed such as exist for political purposes only, such as towns, cities, parishes, and counties. And in many respects, they are so, although they involve some private interest. But strictly speaking, public corporations are such only as are founded by the government for public purposes when the whole interest belongs to also the government. It is therefore the foundation be private, though under the charter of the government. The corporation is private, however extensive the use may be to which it is devoted, either by the bounty of the founder or the nature and object of the institution. For instance, a bank created by the government for its own use, whose stock is, notice it says for its own uses, whose stock is exclusively owned by the government, is in its strictest sense a public corporation. So a hospital created and endowed by the government for general charity. But a bank whose stock is owned by private persons is a private corporation, although it is erected by the government, and its objects and operations partake of a public nature. The same doctrine may be affirmed of insurance, canal, bridge, and turnpike companies. In all these cases, the use may, in certain senses, be called public, but the corporations are private, as much so indeed as if the franchises were vested in a single person. Now, y'all go back and listen to this show on Friday. I want y'all to go back and listen to it, where me and this guy was getting into it, because, and it's just normal, I try to tell these guys, because I think they think I just talk out the side of my neck. I don't talk out the side of my neck. I talk from experience, and I'm well read. I'm very well read. I've read a lot more things than most of these guys could possibly imagine. All right. So when I direct you to do something, all right, because you're wondering how can the government is public be having a private corporation? And in your mind, you didn't reason it out that that's impossible. And then I go and tell you to get an American jurisprudence and read what these people are saying. The reason I'm saying what I'm saying is not because I'm talking out the side of my neck and making statements. I'm talking this because I read this shit 10 years ago. And you just now getting into this shit. A lot of people, you got the same problem I had when I first got into this. You arrogant. You think you know everything. Remember the story I told you when I was first learning this? I've been doing this for about 2 years, about approximately 21, 22 months. And I'm at an old man. And I thought I knew everything. I've been reading day in and day out. I don't care if you've been reading this day in and day out for the last 5 years. You still don't know shit. You still at the beginner level. I've been doing this day in and day out. And this old man told me that I didn't know law. And I was offended by that. But the difference between me and a lot of those guys out there that you see is they won't humble themselves. I forced myself to humble myself to allow this man to teach me so I can learn something. I'm like, okay, well, man, tell me what it is that I don't know. He said, go get you an American jurisprudence. And he handed me this public and private outline. He drew it on a piece of paper. And that's all he gave me. And I went in the law library and I studied all these subjects. I went into municipal corporations and found all this stuff. Found the answer to the questions I was having. And that's why I tell you to do the same thing. But most people are too lazy to do it. And this is why I put PDFs up on my website. Okay, you can't go to the law library. All right, what's your excuse now? I'm showing you a PDF of it right here on the internet. So what's your excuse now? Then I take the time to read it for you. Right here, public corporations, quasi-public corporations, and private corporations. Right here. Now, when you read this American jurisprudence, you're going to see in the footnotes, all right, these are case laws, okay? So right here, you'll see when you read something and you come to the end of a sentence, you're going to see a number at the end of the sentence. That is directing you to go down to the bottom and pull the case, because they are pulling out, this is coming out of cases. That's the genius of American jurisprudence. Public corporations, quasi-public corporations, and private corporations. Considering the general scope and purpose of corporations in this country, they need to be divided into three general classes. The first being public municipal corporations, the object of which is to promote public interest, and which may be called strictly public corporations. The second class being quasi-public corporations, which are technically private, but are of a quasi-public character, having in view some public enterprise in which the public interests are involved, and owing certain duties to the public as such. For example, railroad, turnpike, and canal companies. And the third class being strictly private corporations, a private foundation, maintained strictly for private emolument, and having in view only strictly private enterprises. The difference between strictly private and strictly public corporations is obvious and radical. The former being formed by the voluntary action of the corporators, being whom there exists a contract whereby such subject is each subject his interest, with certain restrictions to control of the corporation management for the accomplishment of the ends for which the company was formed, and the latter not being in the same sense voluntary associations, and no contract existing between the members. The distinction, however, between quasi-public and private corporations is much less clearly marked. These quasi-public corporations partake both of the nature of private and public corporations. Let me say that again. These quasi-public corporations partake both of the nature of private and public corporations. Now, let me show you where I first was alerted to this. Where did I first start wanting to look at this? This is Law, Redemption, in Court, dealing with presentment. I'm showing y'all everything I read, how I found out stuff, how I studied. Should be right in here. Any genuine assessment involves a contract, bearing the signatures. Everything is contract, y'all. It's all contract. I'm trying to tell you. It's all right here. Here it is. All right. This is where I first came into this. All right. This is why I tell y'all to read these documents. All right. To understand more of the money system operating in the world today, we must first take a short digression into the history. The Legislative Act of February 21st, 1871, 41st Congress, Session 3, Chapter 62, page 419, chartered a federal corporation entitled United States, aka U.S. Incorporated, a commercial agency of what was originally designated as Washington, D.C. Incorporated is a corporation for the international bankers, et al. And outside the Constitution. It is. The jurisdiction of the U.S. corporation is private, commercial, international, and military admiralty maritime. Every citizen of the United States is a citizen of U.S. Incorporated, which is a corporation, not a country, and bereft of standing in law, as well as access to genuine law, meaning common law, that was accessible to Americans under their contract with the parent corporation, United States of America. Every citizen of the United States is also an enemy of the state. In other words, the United States government has codified the Amendatory Act of 1933 to the original 1917 Trading with the Enemy Act. This is codified inter alia, which means among other things, at 12 U.S.C. 95. All right, so it's right here that I started reading about these public and private nature of this corporation. And the 1871 Constitution of the United States of the private corporation, U.S. Incorporated, is identical to that of the 1787 Constitution for the United States of America, except for the difference in the 13th Amendment. In the USA Constitution, the 13th Amendment is one forbidding attorneys from holding public office. In the U.S. Constitution, the 13th Amendment is a prohibition against slavery and indentured servitude. So right here, you can see also where I found out the information on the two different constitutions. Now, did I just believe all of this stuff that I'm reading in this document? No, I didn't just believe it. I went to the law library and found all this stuff. Because when I found out about this 1871 Act, okay, and down here you're going to see that this 10 mile square, which is in Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17, what that made me do is